Hello, Doug.
Hey, what's up, Bart? How are you?
How you doing?
Good,
You got a
good.
10-10 hand for us? Is that what you said?
Yep, a 10-10 hand at Parks.
Ah, another Parks. Parks. Do they still
Yeah.
only do that game on, is it Monday and Wednesdays or Tuesdays or something like that?
Tu- Tuesdays is their big day, but
Uh-huh.
it usually runs as well Friday night, Saturday night, some random nights. But Parks isn't really up to full speed yet, so they'll probably run fairly often. But with COVID, it's kind of hit or miss.
So it's on Tuesday? Oh, you said, oh, I'm sorry. I missed what days do they usually play? 10-10.
Yeah, so it'll always run on Tuesdays.
Okay.
Tuesdays is
Okay.
Park's biggest day,
Right.
but
Okay.
your other standard days, it'll run Friday night, Saturday night, just
Got
not
it.
to the level of Tuesday.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay.
So, seven-handed is
Mm-hmm.
Park's. There are two villains in this hand.
Okay.
It folds around to me, and I'm on the button,
Mm-hmm.
and I look down at two red queens, and I make it $50. Standard open is 40, but because I knew the players in the blinds, I raised it up a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the small blind, he three bets me to 230,
So how
which
deep
is
are the stacks right now, by the way?
so I'm 2,500 effective. The
Okay.
small blind has me covered, and then the big blind is 2,000 effective.
So okay, so small blind covers, big blind 2000. You make it 50 on the button, small blind 3 bets to 200.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry, 230 he three
230.
bets to.
Okay. Yep.
And he's a pro good player. And
Okay.
then it goes to the big blind who is wild, a losing player. He's V-pipping 90% plus. He flats the three bet of 230. Then it comes back to me and I consider four betting, but because I had some history with the players before, and I thought maybe I could be against aces or kings and didn't want to bloat the pot. I just flat and chose to see a flop.
Oh, you got a that's I think that's a big. So, I don't know if you caught the first hand at all cuz I know you came on afterwards, but the caller in the beginning was like so he was so trying to he was so concentrated on, oh, should I re-raise with kings pre-flop and give it, because he had opened from under the gun, under the gun and plus one
Yeah,
three bet him, right? And I was like, yeah, probably like at 100 BBs at 1-3, but if people are playing super tight, you could sometimes call with kings. It's really tight configuration, right? And I also said, but if somebody calls in between, of course, it's a 4 bet. This is a 4 bet all day. You said, Doug, this is
yeah,
a 4 bet all day. You open to 50, small blind makes it 230, a big blind who's V-pipping 90%, who's wild. You've got a huge overlay here, right?
yeah,
Huge
yeah. It was,
overlay.
yeah, a big mistake on my part. I didn't think closely enough about this with that dead money out there. I
Uh huh.
need to be four betting that 100% of the time.
Yeah, I just think that there's just so, yeah, it's just, man, and it's also too, like, if you've got a guy who's V-pipping that wide, so there's no straddle, right? It's just two blinds, right? It's 10-10, right?
Correct. Yep.
So think of the good pro and how he's adjusting with his small blind sort of frequencies and ranges, because if you're opening to 5x and he has any type of playable hand here, he can't depend on him ever just calling and like the big blind folding. The big blind's always calling, so he's always going to be playing a three better fold strategy. Now, if you're opening from the
Correct.
button, I mean, he could just have a lot of hands there. There's just so much dead money. I mean, I got to be honest with you, I'd have a hard time folding here at 200 big blinds to even get it in. I mean, if you four bet back over to like 550 and then the small blind jams, I think I'm gonna stack off. I mean, it is what it is, but I definitely think that I would four bet. But okay, so you call, and the pot's what, just a hair under 700, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the flop comes out 9-8 to rainbow,
Okay.
and the three better in the small blind C bets uh, 230, and without much hesitation, the big blind calls. then it gets back to me, and that's where I have another decision, and I think I make a mistake. I contemplate raising to maybe 750, 800, but at that point, it's the small blind and myself probably getting stacks in. So I take the more passive approach, and I do the overcall in that situation. Just call the 230 as well.
I don't think that's a mistake. I think that now raise getting it in against the small blind is going to be bad. Now, if you want to say, oh, I can raise for protection and the big blind's going to call me, the big blind's going to call me with, worse hands, that's an extreme exploit. But when you take a look at this flop now in a 3-bet pot, if you raise and the small blind's going to get in with you, you no longer are going to have, the best hand. I mean, you do have to keep track of pot size in this particular scenario because the pot's going to be, 230 call, 460, it's like 1500. And then you've got like 1700. So if you were to jam, I know it's a pot size all in, but I have no problem just calling here and seeing what develops, because you got to understand, like, if you raise the small blind, he's not going to be getting in light. Like, he might even fold like you could accidentally get him off the best hand here sometime. I mean, it doesn't sound like it with as wild as the big blind is, but remember, he's got to defend uber tight because the big blind called too, but he's wild. This is not a mistake. I would call here as played as well. So I don't think this is a mistake.
Okay.
So it looks like it's 1380 going to the turn.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So turn comes in, it's a 2. So 9822 full rainbow.
Okay.
And the small blind barrels again, which immediately makes me think that he's on a pocket pair that's pretty good and not something like ace king, because they're not double barreling into two people with a hand like ace king generally. So he bets 400, and the small blind calls.
The big blind calls, right?
I'm sorry, yeah, the big blind calls, and then it's on me on the button, and I kind of contemplate decisions again. I think anything's available for me. I could fold, I could jam, or I could just flat and see what comes on the river. And
I don't think you can fold.
I
don't think you can fold because, right, so the pot's 2180. So again, you open on the button with queens at about, the small blind's the smaller stack effective at about 2K. So the small blind covers. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have 2500. Okay. So
Correct.
Yeah, you actually are deeper. Yeah. So I was gonna say, like, so you open to 50, small blind makes it 230, big blind wild flats, you call, pot 690, small blind c bets 230 on 9-8 deuce. You have 2 red queens, call, you overcall, pot's 1380. Now the turn's a deuce, total rainbow. Guy bets 400, big blind calls, pot's 2180. But if you shove, though, I mean, if you were to shove here, though, I mean, first of all, you can't fold because you're getting over 5-1 here. You absolutely have the best hand here 1 out of 6 times for sure. And a lot of times the guy will just give up. So, I mean, it's 2180, and it looks like before your call, you have like 2,000 left. Yeah, I wouldn't jam here either. I would just call again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. I mean, obviously very good odds I'm getting at that point. I could be against a pocket pair that's higher, pocket pair that's lower, a bluff. I'm not really sure. And the big blinds play is just so odd to me as well. But I felt like I had to continue there.
By the way, before you tell me what the river is, though, I just want to shape this hand a little bit. So the pot's 2580. Talk about like defense sort of frequency type of stuff. So the pot's 2580, even though this is multi-way. And you've put in like 900. So you've got maybe like 1600 and change left. That's a good double barrel card for this guy on the turn. He could very, very well be sort of shaping a triple barrel. It's a good blank double barrel card for him in the sense that it doesn't fit into any of the draws. It's a dynamic board where a lot of times there's going to be an overcard that's going to come. And even if a blank were to come, like a 3, a 4, something like that, a lot of times people aren't going to hold on with a 9 or an 8. Before you tell me what the river is, I just want to sort of go through something. Say the river is like a 3 or a 4, or something. I mean, I'm trying to think of the blanks because those probably would be the only kind of blanks. I mean, maybe an 8. because everything else sort of changes things. If the guy jams at the end and he's competent, I'm talking about the small blind, say the river's a 3, right? And he's competent and he
Yeah.
jams on the river, okay? And the big blind folds, you have to call in theory. Because like you have like, I mean, yes, you do have 9s full and 8s full, but if you're folding queens in that scenario, then he can just basically like bluff you off of everything. That's the theory. That's the theory of that, about minimum, about sort of defense frequency, and like how, you know, if you only have 1600 left and he's going to bluff at, say, 2/3 the size of the pot on the river, let's say he bets the entire pot, you have to defend with 50% of the hands you get with, right? If he bets half the pot, you have to defend with, I think it's this little part, I think it's 66. So if you bet 2/3, I think you'd have to defend with 60, something like that. And queen would definitely fall into your range. I'm not talking about pot odds. I know that's not going to happen on the river. We're going to see another interesting river, but I just want to tell you that because you've played queen slow this way, you would have to call. Now, if it went bet all in on a 3 and then the big blind called, then, you know, you'd have a tough decision. But we're going to see an interesting river here, right?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
So the river comes an ace.
Okay. The river is an ace. Okay.
So the small blind, who was the aggressor, double-barreled, he slows down and he checks. So that immediately makes me think he doesn't have an ace. He's worried. So I feel pretty good. He's been the aggressor, and I'm thinking I'm just going to get the showdown, or I'm going to have an option. But the big blind decides to take action here. So he would just call in the small blind's bets on the flop and turn, but now he bets 850, which is not his entire stack, but a majority of it. And then the decision is on me.
Oh, this is really interesting. You know, when you emailed me in this hand, I didn't even consider option 3 here. So the river's an ace. The small blind checks, and because of the stack sizes, the small blind checks and the big blind bets 850. Number one, for some reason, like if you didn't have to worry about the small blind, let's say let's say somehow the small blind like had his hand killed for some reason right now, like, or you just knew that he was going to fold for whatever reason. Just let's just pretend, right? Obviously, you have a call here. Like, I don't think, I don't think that I think that the big blind here is full of shit. I mean, he's very polarized if he's a wild player, in the sense that, like, he's going to either have like ace deuce, you know, 8s or 9s full, or just nothing. He's going to show up with like jack 10. Like, you have to call against that range against the big blind. The issue here, right, this wild guy, the issue here is that, does the small blind play like ace, king, ace, queen, ace, jack, whatever it is, like this, some ace highs like this? You know, maybe he starts a bet with like ace 5 suited with a backdoor, ace 7, something like that. Continues to barrel turn because it's a good barrel card, and now he checks the river. Like, just because he checks the river here doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't have an ace. Even sometimes upwards of ace, jack, ace, queen, ace, king. So when you emailed me in this hand, I was like, this is really interesting, because if you call here, it's very, very difficult for the other guy to overcall, right? But if he's playing like, say he has ace 10 or ace jack here from the small blind, this whale bets 850 into 2580, right? So now you call. So 850 plus 2580 is like 34. Now you call. The pot's like 42 or 43. 850 for him to call. He's still getting like 5.5 to 1. Like, if I played like ace 5 this way and I was in his spot, I think I'd have to puke overcall your call, because I would think that there would be enough of a chance that you would actually have what you have here, which is an overpair. And we both think the big blind whale is full of shit, right? That he's just like betting out. So that now I'm scratching my head and I'm wondering, could you rate? So when the big blind bets 850 here, he only has like 150 left, right? He barely has any money left. So could you raise the river here to get the small blind out of the hand? That's interesting. It's not a common spot. And the thing is that I think, I mean, I guess once in a great while, the small blind might show up with like pocket aces that was played this way once in a
Correct.
great while, but I don't think he's got nines or eights played this way, whereas you do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you raise the river here, I see it seems to put, it seems to me that it would put the guy in the small blind in an absolutely terrible. He would have to fold,
Yeah.
and you have the advantage here where the big blind doesn't have that much more money left, right? Like it's almost like the
Yeah.
big blind moves all in, and you can raise the small blind out. But if the big blind has more money, you're just burning money, right? If he has a hand,
Yeah.
you'd be risking
Yeah. Yeah.
money. So
Exactly. That's what made this so difficult. I obviously botched it pre-flop, but on the river here, when the big blind fires, I'm kind of confused what to do. I could just flat, but if I flat, the small blind could jam over me, and then I'm in a world of pain because I've committed 2/3 of my stack to the pot, and I probably have to fold at that point. But I could also just jam over the big blind in that situation. Then I'd probably get the small blind off of a hand like kings and just ISO heads up versus the big blind, who's very polarized here.
well,
So
I don't think he can call with kings. I don't think that he can call with kings. I think that's slightly different. That would be my
yeah,
cutoff. I mean, that would be a really, really tough. Looking at people and calling the chat, if the hero calls on the button with queen, queen, is the small blind going to overcall with king, king? I'm more concerned here that the small blind might have ace X here, that he would,
yeah.
that he would,
But
that he would, sort of fold.
so
So,
another
or excuse me, that he
so
would
like
overcall.
So like another odd table dynamic that occurred as soon as the big blind bet out here, the small blind and I looked at each other, and the small blind goes to me, "Hey, it's not us against him. I'm in the hand still, so make your decision." So that kind of made me range his hand a little bit weaker, and it made me feel that the small blind thought that the big blind was full of shit as well.
Yeah, but let me ask you this question though: can't the small blind also have tens or jacks here too?
Correct. Yeah. I
So,
put it on
I mean, you could
10.
win anyways.
Yeah, yeah,
You could have
exactly.
the best hand here anyway. So it's an interesting, when the big blind starts with 2,000 and the guy bets and it goes three bets, so he's down to 1750 on the flop, and then he's down to 1500 on the turn. So now, or excuse me, and then he's down to 1100 on the turn. So it goes 234, 8. So he's got like 1100 left here. So you have to risk an extra 300 by raising. So it's not a non-trivial amount. I'm talking about if you raise to get the guy in the small blind off and the big
True.
blind
Yeah.
actually has a hand, you're losing another 300. I think that this would be more of a play here if he had like just like 1/3 the size of the pot all in, or if he had like 900 or 1,000, where you're not risking anymore. Here you actually have to risk a little bit more. Although I guess we could just consider that what if he just moved all in here for 1,100, right?
Yeah.
The big blind seems like full of shit. Like I said, he's going to either have a very, very strong hand or a monster hand.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think I'd probably call. I think I'm gonna call. I think I'd call. Now, some people are saying folding, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. See, it's so
Yeah.
tough because it's multi-way, and I've seen this guy in the big blind call three bets pre with 6-4, 2-8, just wild hands. So that just got me thinking that his range is just really unlimited. But to your
Says the guy
point
in the
earlier,
live chat's error eliminator 2.0 says the solver says call question mark. I don't know, think you're gonna be able to run this one in the solver, buddy. The cold call three bet. So yeah, this is just one where it's like I said, you don't get into this spot very often in Hold'em where you could raise somebody else out of the hand, but I think that the big blind actually has a little bit too much where you're risking more. So what did you end up doing?
yeah. So I ended up tank folding,
Oh wow.
and then the small blind
Obviously
tank
called. He has to
call.
call, right? Well, if he tank called, then if the small blind tank called, you're fucked. Like if I were you and I folded and then the small blind is now thinking about it and he's a good player, I would know that I would know that I'm fucked right now. I mean, I knew that I would made the wrong decision because I know the small blind doesn't have a strong hand if he's tanking, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the small blind flips over pocket jack.
He calls.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. He had jacks. Wow. And what did the big blind have?
The big blind just floated crazily with king 10 offsuit.
Yep. By the way, I did not know the results of this, right? I don't even know if you put in your email. I didn't know the results of this, but what I was
I didn't tell you it.
Yeah, I just think that I want to call there. It does not surprise me that the big blind has nothing here. And the more I think about it, the more now I do want to call because I think you beat some of the value range that the small blind plays this way anyways, like tens and jacks,
correct,
right?
And jacks.
So
So,
you probably had to you probably had to walk that one off, huh?
Yeah, it was tough. It was right at the end of the night. It kind of ate all my profit up in the 900 that I lost there, and I just couldn't. I couldn't conclude. Did I make the right decision in folding? Should I have jammed? Should I have just called? I just couldn't figure it out, which is why I reached out to you.
Yeah, I mean, I've had to walk off. I've had to walk off poker hands. Usually not in no limit cash games, because you don't get into these scenarios. I've had to walk off. Literally had to get up from the table when I've folded giant pots in high stakes limit 08. Like $10,000 pots for like one bet where I was like, how could I possibly be good here either way? The pot's 8,000. It's 150 for me to call. I'm getting like 40 to 1. I'm serious, like getting 40 to 1, but how can I possibly be good here with ace jack high on a 7-7-7-8-3 board? You know what I mean? When it goes bet call. Because in Omaha, right, you got to play the pair in your hand when there's 3 on the board. It's just something like that. And also too, I've had to walk it off when I was playing in 10K Omaha 8 tournaments where I've made folds for like one bet where I would have like won like 15 bets in a pot, and those they're so big in a split pot tournament. So I've been in these situations before, but not usually in no limit hold'em. But I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the call. Thanks for saving the show with that
Bart.
call. That was a pretty cool call, for sure. Like I said, I didn't know the ending, but you just kind of sort of like, hey, like this small blind, he could have like he's not gonna check 9s or 8s full there right at the end, and probably not aces either. So, there is certainly a value range that you beat by just calling anyways too. If you like what you've seen here, please hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this call in hand, hit the like button down below. To check out crushlivepoker.com, click on the link in the description. Use the code YTA300 to get the first 30 days for free.